Warren in Bristol in March 2019. She's the second vice chair of the Municipal Government and Housing Committee. She serves on the House Oversight Committee and chairs its Aging and Senior Services Subcommittee. She's also a member of the House Environment and Natural Resources Committee and the House Health and Human Services Committee. Rep. Speakman is also a delegate to the New England Board of Higher Education. Please join me in welcoming. And to my immediate left is Senator Linda Ujifusa. She was elected in November 2022 to represent District 11, Portsmouth and Bristol in the Rhode Island Senate. She's a member of the Rhode Island Senate Health and Human Services Committee and the Special Legislation and Veterans Affairs Committee. Please join me in welcoming. We will be having Senator Pam Moria join us shortly. She represents District 32, Barrington, Bristol, and East Providence. Ladies,
thank you. Thank you. I'll just start by saying I'm so impressed that everyone came on a Saturday morning. Thank you. And we are not used to having this kind of crowd. And so I'm thinking that since you all bothered to come, that perhaps we could just go around the room and give you a chance to ask a question or maybe two questions, because if we did that and you each even took 1 minute, that would take us through halfway through the meeting. But so if you could just very briefly state what your major concern or question is, and we'll just let everybody do that, and maybe that way we can pick out the major things to address here, and what we don't cover here, we're happy to talk about more online. Does that make sense? So if anybody has any questions.
Should I
Oh,
start?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, question on the oversight. So since both of you, June and Susan, you are both on the oversight, I'm not sure if you are on the oversight. So there's supposed to be 27 people on the oversight. And we all know,
Seems like a lot. but-
27, yeah.
No,
because
you're talking about
it's going to be joint.
Oh, joint, that one, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we all know that oversight is basically has no power. So, and it's very unlikely that it will be under oath or anything like that. What do you think the results will be? Because it looks more and more like what's going on with the bridge is turning into be some type of a cover-up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So because they're looking at the bridge for 2 months and a half, and basically nothing is happening. We're getting info in dribs and drabs, what's going on with that,
Okay.
and we probably would never know what actually happened.
Thank you. Wait, why don't we, thank you. I just want to be respectful of everyone who's here, so can we go around the room?
Questions before we do one answer?
No, I just want to know what the questions are that people have, and if yours has already been stated, like this gentleman is asking about the bridge, then you don't have to say, I'm interested in the bridge too, but I just want to know the universe of questions that we need to address today and give everyone a chance to feel like I did not. So, yeah, go ahead.
So,
Jeff? Yes, thank you.
I didn't state the question yet. So
go ahead.
my question would be, what do you expect to come out from the oversight hearings? Because
Okay.
it seems like not much will.
All right, thank you so much. Susan or Clara, do you guys have questions?
If you have a question, raise your hand.
Yeah, how about that?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we'll start here and go back, if that's okay. Go ahead.
This may be going back a while, but I have a question about the legislation that was passed having to do with firemen and
Pensions?
the pension,
Okay.
yeah, and I just thought it was extraordinary.
Got it, okay.
Okay, great. Anyone else in the second? There you go.
Hi, Judy Burns. I have 3 concerns: East Main Road safety, bike path safety, and any thought about making bus 60 free until the bridge gets, until something happens with the bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the second row? Mr. Ashard? Oh, I'm sorry.
John Fonzie, Barrington. Just a general question. I'm just looking at the topics that were advertised. Some of them involve, I would think, Minister of increased state funds, for free lunch, for example, extending family leave, and with all the concerns about the bridge, the budget strain that will result from that. Is there any thought of limiting state expenditures, until the overall cost of that project is ascertained?
Limiting state expenditures until the overall cost of the bridge? Okay, thank you.
And what percentage of the state will be responsible for replacement or repair of the bridge.
Yep.
Thank you.
Recently, I saw somebody wrote a letter to the editor suggesting that we here in Rhode Island are perhaps the least democratic. Yes. And then went on to explain why that is. Now, you folks have already got the experience of trying to get anything done in the legislature. And we know who rules in the state of Rhode Island, and it is the President of the Senate and the House Speaker. So the question I have for you is, would any of you consider providing legislation that would do something about petitions, legislative grants, term limits, voter initiative and referendum, which we don't allow here, and line item vetoes? Did you get all of those?
So,
Those
Legislative
are
grants,
all
petitions, term limits.
voter initiative and referendum,
Got it.
yeah,
and the line item veto.
okay.
Those are just a few of the things that were mentioned in terms of how we can improve the ability of we, the citizens,
Yep.
to actually participate in the democracy that we simply don't seem to have right now. That's my question. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with many of the things that were already mentioned, so I won't mention those again, but on top of what this gentleman just said, I'd also like to know about the support for an inspector general, especially in light of the disaster and atrocity that we are dealing with the 195 project, and then today even Gano Street being closed, the Henderson Bridge being limited. This is something that really should be brought, I'm not surprised, I'm surprised it's not a louder voice. I think that between the bike path and this is enough is enough. I find that most of the legislation that you all are putting in really don't have to do with a lot of the things that I think would make our state a better state for small businesses, bringing businesses in. We lost Hasbro, laying off 1,100 workers, and there's really not much in the way of things coming in that can replace the quality of those types of jobs. I find most of the legislation is adding administrative jobs, money for free lunch for kids who can afford lunch, things like that. So that's sort of my direction and questions. And I think there's some things that really need to happen in order to make our state more lively and not follow down the path of, becoming a suburb of Boston, which we are there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, I guess over there?
Thank you. I don't know how many people in the room took the ferry to Providence when it was speaking to the issue about the bridge. And I know that that was put into place because of the difficulty with this whole traffic pattern. But then I read about, and it was so expensive. I mean, it cost so much money, it was almost like overkill with running the 3 ferries and all. But I am curious how many people in this room took the ferry to Providence. Did anyone?
Who took the ferry? All right, got it.
People.
My daughter did, to go to work.
There you go.
So there you go. But to your point about economic development, I just read about Quonset and all of the wonderful things that are going on in the Quonset area and the port, and the money that's being used for highway development on the West Bay and in North Kingstown. And I have this moment because we use our wonderful natural resource for transportation, but we don't use it for recreation, but we don't use it for transportation. And we have this bike path that so many of us use. And I thought, high in the sky, why isn't a ferry available to do a loop Providence, Quonset, Newport, Bristol, Providence on a regular basis? I think that it was very short term, and I think there's a lot of potential there. And if we're encouraging people on the bike path, and it seems like there's this whole initiative with electric bikes and all on the bike path, but most people can't ride a bike 30 miles in one day, but they could do it for 15 minutes. So this is just, I took the ferry, and I had friends who took it from Providence to Bristol for lunch, had visiting visitors from England thought it was fabulous, took the bus back. So there's this whole series of ways of transportation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. That's great. Anyone else here? Yeah. How about 1, 2, 3, and that's it?
4.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
I understand Representative Fisher-Martin introduced a bill called American Dream, and I'd like to know if you represent to support that legislation, and do you think that legislation will get passed?
Could you say what it does, please?
American Dream.
What is it, though?
I
It's a
believe
$40,000.
He's got the floor, sorry. Go ahead.
I believe it's a bill to help people buy their first home. Are any of you familiar with it?
Is that Representative Morgan's
Morgan,
bill?
Patricia
Yeah,
Morgan, yeah.
got it, thank
Think
you.
it'll get passed?
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My question is actually similar to that, and it's pretty timely, as a matter of fact, next week. I'd like to know each of your opinions on House Bill 7182. Let me just read what it is for the audience. It's a joint resolution respectfully requesting the Convention of the States under the Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. This is a means of petitioning Congress to call a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments to the U.S. Constitution to impose a variety of restraints on the federal bureaucracy. The 6th, I believe, the bill has been assigned to the committee. I'm not sure if either of our representatives served on it. I'm sorry, I missed some of the introduction. The committee is the House State Government and Elections Committee. Are either of you? No. No? Okay. I'd still, if you can get around to it today, I'd still appreciate your opinion on that bill. And then the senators, do you think a comparable bill will be coming in the Senate?
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, yeah, I'm self-interest as a golden oldie, whoever's looking over the tax relief for seniors for the state of Rhode Island taxes. I think it's up to 125, 150K in income. You get 50K off the top. Just the status of that and what you expected, whether it will pass or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. Do either of you know whether or not the legislation that was presented the last couple of years to make it simple, put the emphasis on pleasure-based sexual content in the 6th grade and up? Do you know if that legislation is on the agenda for this year? Do either of you plan on sponsoring it or hosting it? Favoring it?
I'm just going to take a second. I apologize for walking a couple minutes late. I'm Pam Loria, Senator District 32. I represent all of Barrington, part of Bristol, and most of Riverside. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have? Yes.
My bill doesn't seem as important or my interest, but I am interested in climate. And I know there is a joint commission that's looking at the bottle bill, and I would like to see or know more about where that is and if there's a possibility of it.
Thank you. Right. Good morning.
Good morning. Is there anyone else?
Hi.
Sure.
Me. I'm Eileen. I'm the library director. I'm speaking as a library director, and I'm also speaking as a citizen of Bristol, a resident of Bristol. I would love if you could support House 7335, state aid to libraries. That will, I believe that you have already signed on to that, Representative. That reinstates the 25% state match as noted in law, so that public libraries in Rhode Island are fully funded by the state. And also the Freedom to Read Act, which is House 7386. This act would encourage and protect the freedom of public libraries to acquire and deaccession materials without limitations, and to be protected against attempts to ban, censor, or otherwise restrict access to books and other materials. This act further prohibits materials being removed from the public libraries due to partisan or doctrinal disapproval. This act would take effect on passage. We also expect Senate companion bills to be coming out anytime. I believe Senator McKinney might be introducing them. So senators, if you would have any questions for me, I'm on the Rhode Island Library Association Legislative Committee, and happy to talk to you as well anytime. Thank you.
Okay. Oops, one more. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good. Me? I wonder if you could tell us if there's any movement in the legislature regarding gun controls?
Good question.
Okay, so.
One more over here.
Yes.
I got a question. I'm behind legislation. I recently submitted legislation to the House. It's called Defend the Guard, and it would prohibit the use of the National Guard in assignments outside of this country unless there's a formal declaration of war. It's actually an anti-war movement because this week we're treated to the heroism, the continued heroism of our Rhode Island brothers and sisters in Albania who engage in a life-saving mission, and that's fabulous because they're amazing people. But I believe in, people like me believe that the best way to respect the members of our national forces, our Army and our armed services, the best way to respect them is to not put them into areas of entanglements, undeclared wars, and respect their lives to only act in the defense of this nation. So it would restrict them to the United States, unless there was a formal declaration of war.
Did you get a sponsor for that bill? Is there a sponsor for that bill?
Yeah, it's David Place in the House, and we're looking for the Senate, hint, hint.
Yes.
Just one quick, I realize that this Tuesday, a vote or a hearing in the House is for the treaty to end the use of nuclear weapons. It passed the Senate last year, thanks to our local Senator Wally Belag. So the vote will be in the House. So I urge our House representatives to support this. It's a non-binding resolution, but it really would be a major coup if the United States could be the first nation first nuclear power, nuclear weapons holding nation to sign on to the treaty.
Okay, anyone else? We didn't get, that's enough. Okay.
We're gonna be here till tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you for all those great questions, though.
Yes, and I want to say, obviously, we can't really delve into them enough in 45 minutes, and so perhaps if my
Let's handle the
colleagues have-
transportation question,
let's do
shall we?
that
We
one.
had several questions about transportation. So the director of the Department of Transportation, Mr. Alviti, meets with the East Bay delegation, including East Providence, every Friday morning on a group call at 9 a.m. We had the second one yesterday. I'm teaching at that time, so I wasn't there, so I can't report on the content.
So I can report on it.
Yeah, I took lots of notes too.
Yeah. So, we'll talk quickly about last week first. That was the first time that we got to meet with them and really explain some of the impacts on the East Bay, and particularly for our businesses, and lots of concerns about congestion in the streets of East Providence, as well as congestion trying to get back and forth off on the East Bay, and what that's doing to our businesses and our commutes and everything. So he took all of those questions, and then that was the first part of yesterday's meeting, was trying to answer some of those questions. And I can get into the details of that if you'd like. But the big things that came out of that were that whether or not the bridge will need extensive renovations versus coming down and building a new bridge. Those are all still open questions. They expect to have reports where they have 7 engineering firms that are working on looking at the bridge and what needs to be done. And they expect to have that report by the end of February, early March. In parallel to that work being done is also work to address the question of why did this happen, and there's a forensic analysis that's being done in tandem, separately, and those reports also they expect to have towards the end of February or beginning of March. Yesterday we were told, and it should have started last evening, that in one of the things, the incredible congestion, I don't know how many of you have experienced this or do this on a daily basis, because I do, trying to come either from the East Bay Expressway or from the 2 East Providence on-ramps is incredibly difficult, and then you have to merge over to those 2 left lanes. Director Alviti, last evening they started where anything prior to the expressway, those lanes will be forced into the 2 lanes before they get there, so that coming from the East Bay onto 195, you're not coming right into that congestion. That traffic prior to that coming westbound is already merged into 2 lanes. They intentionally do that in the evening on the weekend so that they can then watch and model the traffic from there. The making that change modeling did indicate to them that that can shave as much as 8 to 10 minutes off the average commute. So they also have a plan to add an additional lane coming eastbound, because I don't know if anybody coming from 95 to the East Bay, particularly coming 95 north, that can get incredibly congested. So they hope to have another eastbound lane within the next couple of weeks.
And I think the questions about the ferry and free bus, those are part of the conversation, but the director is not focused on, as I understand it, not focused on providing alternative modes of transportation. He's always been a car guy. If you followed transportation policy in Rhode Island, he's a car guy. We push him. We had to advocate strenuously and unsuccessfully for speeding up the East Bay bike path bridge reconstructions, right? That we at the very beginning of that, we all did the same process where we met with him and we said, this has to happen. This is not just for fun, but fun is good for the economy of the East Bay, right? But the bike path bridges are also for people getting to work, kids getting to school. That was supposed to be on the fast track. It's going to be 7 years from start to finish. Yeah. According to the current, if you go on the RIDOT website, 2026 is the date, and we keep pushing. But again, it's a difficult department to get into from the outside. With regard to oversight, Rep. Donovan and I are both on House Oversight. There will be a hearing next week. I don't think it's been scheduled yet, right?
I didn't see it. I've been told in the Senate that it's the 12th.
12th.
That's Monday? Okay, we're the last to know. So if you have specific questions that you would like us to ask at the hearing, send them, right? Send them to us, to Susan and myself. I'm not sure what the protocols will be, but.
So it is a joint hearing, so it's Senate and House together, but neither of us are on oversight.
Based on the reading the room, when you just mentioned the 7-year thing on the bike path, I'm going to guess, I'm going to speak for the group, that is unacceptable.
It is unacceptable. Yeah.
What are you talking
It's
about?
unacceptable to us too.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
To allow them to get, to bring that, it's been closed for almost 6 years.
Right. I agree.
So
We agree. And Representative Knight, who's not here today because he doesn't represent Bristol, but he shares Warren with me and Barrington with Rep. Boylan. He has just yesterday asked for an update, and we will start this process again. We're already pressing them. We're already pressing them about Washington Bridge, but we're going to have to continue pressing them about this.
Anything that you can give out to the public that we can be behind that is super helpful, because that is completely I can't even believe that that's even being.
I agree. I was shocked when I went on the website to look for the update and saw 2026.
Can we go back and see the picture with them all with the shovels?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was in that picture, I believe. Sorry about that.
Well, and I guess the most recent, and Rep. Knight did send asking for an update yesterday, the most recent problem with that is that there's a permitting delay.
CRMC.
Right, from the CRMC.
Well, they've had a couple of changes in fighting over like how wide the bridge should be. This is ridiculous. It's like how big of a bridge. I mean, that is just not acceptable. I don't know how everyone else feels, but.
Right, but to be clear, not 7 years from now.
7 years from the start.
From the start, right, 2026.
Yeah.
It's also a funding thing from DEM is putting money into that too, aren't they?
It was when they started digging, it was fully funded. The funding was planned. Yeah. About the ferry, that would require a coherent transportation policy for the state of Rhode Island. Enough said. Could you say that again, please? That requires a coherent transportation policy for the state of Rhode Island.
Okay, how do we get that moving? Is there a petition process or something?
A petition process for the ferry?
Yes.
It's big. Cohesive transportation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a group of us, I can't speak for the Senate, but there's a group of us in the House who want more funding for RIPTA, a free 60 bus during this crisis. So we say these things at committee hearings or to our leadership, but as you point out, we are not, Susan's the chair of a committee, I'm the chair of a commission, but the there's 75 members of the House, there's 38 members of the Senate, and there's the executive branch, and it's very, you know, we can hear you, we can write things down, we can go and say things, make strong statements, we can write, I mean, we wrote a letter, right? I don't think you appreciated our letter, but we all wrote a letter to the governor where we talked about how disruptive the bridge was for our residents. But, you know, he did win the election last year, so he stands on his mandate, I guess, and.
Are those hearings open to the public?
Pardon me?
Are those hearings you're talking about open to the public?
Everything is
Yes.
always open to the public.
Yeah.
You can watch it on Capitol TV as it's happening, or you can watch the recording afterwards. You just have to go to ri.gov.
Or you could be there in person.
Or you could be there in
It's
person.
a small room, though.
Yeah.
And you can also testify in writing. I think a lot of people miss that you don't have to be at a hearing to testify. Anybody on the committee does get any written testimony as well.
Can I make a suggestion? RIPTA board meetings are open to the public. Peter Alviti is now the head of RIPTA. And I was at the last one. There's extensive public comment, and Mr. Alviti is about 20 feet away from the public comment. It's actually very well organized meetings. So if you want to make it close and personal and actually look him right in the eye, RIPTA board meetings.
So, just to, I don't know, there are a couple big picture things you should understand. There is something called the Transportation Improvement Plan, which lists all the projects in the state that RIDOT is planning to do, and it gives you the schedule, and that has input from the municipality. So there was some attempt to take this giant bucket of money to fix roads and organize it so that we are attacking them, you know, in a rational way. There's that, and there's also RIPTA was having community engagement things to have a master plan for public transportation be formed. So there are efforts to try to impose rationality onto these big projects, but it's tough as you get down into the details, and I won't bore you here, but you get really confusing things happening, as we did in Portsmouth, trying to get East Main Road fixed. That's a whole Megillah. But I think it's fair to say everybody here is trying to represent our districts with this agency that's set, two agencies actually, that are set to handle public transportation and roads. And we are competing with those folks who have a significant number of more voters and representatives on their side, so we're trying, guys, I'm just saying, and we appreciate any support you can offer us and suggestions.
Well, and with the TIP, that fund, you can watch as they have meetings and they talk about the TIP. Our projects in the East Bay move up and then they move down. Just as a warrant issue, but the sidewalks near the Audubon, that's in Bristol, but up the road from Audubon, the sidewalks are horrible. And I get emails and calls all the time from folks who are trying to stroll their babies along in strollers or people in wheelchairs. You cannot. The tree roots have come up. And that is a project, Senator Feelag is a very strong advocate for this. That's a project that was up at the top of the TIP list and now it's gone down.
Right, and also our funding problems are huge, both in terms of roads and in public transportation. Because roads, we're getting money from a gas tax and people are buying more fuel efficient cars, and that source of money is starting to drop. As far as RIPTA is concerned, they were getting a ton of money from the feds because of COVID. They are not getting that money this year. So there's a huge gap in what they need to continue operating, and that's why you're seeing them cut back so many of their buses. So funding is a big issue, big problem, and I know a lot of you folks here are very much advocates for trying to cut our taxes. Absolutely. I'm actually more of an advocate for trying to even out our taxes so that the wealthier folks take on more of a burden. But that said, there's funding problems for these things you all want, which are better roads and public transportation. So we have to figure out where's that money going to come from. And I can talk to you about that, but yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, while we're on transportation, quickly, just to also warn you, coming in March until May, the Mount Hope Bridge, which is not under the mandate of the DOT, that is the Rhode Island Bridge Authority, during the day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 1 on Friday, will be down to 1 lane while they do a dehumidification process, which they tell us will increase the life of the bridge by approximately 25 years. But that is obviously adding insult to injury.
How long will that take?
Excuse me?
How long will that take, do they know?
They said from March, and it's their intention to be done before Roger Williams has their graduation.
Can I say in defense of the Bridge Authority, so who controls the bridges that come onto Quinnick Island? It's the Bridge and Tunnel Authority, and those folks are separate from RIDOT, and this project is doing, as Pam said, an extension of the life of this bridge, and I thought it was, actually quite worthwhile, but you have to realize Peter Alviti was brought on board, he will tell you, because our bridges were horrible. That's what was making Rhode Island lower ranked in many, many analyses. So he was hired by Gina Raimondo to fix our bridges. And he has this, I'm just quoting him now, has fixed, he says, 300 bridges. Now that said, the Bridge Authority that we're talking about here has very high ranked bridges. They're actually in pretty good shape, and they're big. And so if you added them, I think there was an effort to try to get those bridges included in the analysis of Rhode Island bridges, because that would raise our numbers instantly. But that didn't happen because part of that would have meant that the money going to support our bridges were going to go to RIDOT to be spent in their general budget. So we fought that off, and I also voted against having Director Alviti become the board chair of RIPTA, and I think I was one of very few votes. Yeah, and the deck of the Monhoe Bridge, which has nothing to do with dehumidification, I went to a meeting with the Bridge Authority last spring. They are in the early stages of planning how they can replace the deck of that bridge. You see it, it's just, it's like a washboard. And I said, please do not shut it down both ways. I mean, my dad worked at Raytheon years and years ago when they had to do that. And it's really a hardship for everybody to go all the way around to Fall River. And they are looking at if they can replace that deck with only one lane at a time. So I will be pushing for one lane at a time, as I have family that crosses that bridge every day also. And to back up, most of us sitting here, we are really affected by the Washington Bridge. I mean, we feel it as much as you do. My daughter has to leave work, and I have to go help her get kids to daycare because she can't manage the daycare opening with what time she has to leave for work every morning. It's a real hardship here for lots of working families, so we do understand, this issue very well. And we're working as hard as we can to try to get answers and try to push for better options.
Do you know whether any of the federal COVID money given to the state is still unspent? And do you know how much that is?
Well, I think it's all answered for. I mean, it was all earmarked, and they only had till 2024 to spend it, correct? Right. We had to spend it by 2024, and as far as I know, they did a good job spending it. He had, I know Speaker Shikarchi, they had to earmark that and get it approved, and that list is huge, and that was a lot of money there, but it's gone. And that's another conversation as far as what we're looking forward to for funding.
Is it gone, or is it simply dedicated for some?
It's dedicated.
Yeah.
So.
Did you want to say anything more on the
about
the bridge and what we're?
I just want to be able to get to some of the other topics. Sure.
Oh yeah.
Is there any other pressing questions about transportation?
Please. So just in terms of the bridge, you said that the plan to dehumidify would be to keep it 25 years longer. What's the plan to replace
more than 50 to 100 years longer, I think. The bridge is 100 years old. Yeah. And to replace that bridge, can you imagine? And the disruption.
Well, I'd love to know the plan for it. If they're adding 25 more years, what's the total? When is it expected to crumble?
I hope not in my lifetime.
They made the dehumidification last.
It's not that long.
Right, yeah.
For you.
We can take that question back. back and
Yeah.
ask the Bridge Authority, because we have a liaison there, so I'm happy to do that, but I don't have the answer for that right now.
Yeah, they're doing the Pell Bridge too. They're doing both bridges.
And that's essential maintenance, that's not incompetence or negligence, that's essential maintenance for a bridge of that type. Suspension, is that what it's called?
Yeah, they did, the San Francisco's done it already, you know. There are lots all over the country they do this, so to extend the life of these suspension bridges.
The bridge meetings are open to the public too. They're held in Jamestown about once a month.
Yeah, right at the
Yeah.
the toll booth there.
Yeah, it's open to the public.
The gantry now, not the booth. Okay. All right, want to go to another question? We can.
Or if you all want to just pick the one that you'd like to speak to, maybe that.
Do you want to do the least democratic states in the? Want to do that one?
Yeah.
Sure. You know, we live that as far as leadership has control. I don't know if we could legislate. You had I support the line item veto. I think most of us do. We campaigned on that. Let's see.
Legislative grants, I use them to help nonprofits in Bristol and Warren. I will not not use them until they go away, because our colleagues use them, and some for causes that I don't think are as noble as the organizations that we support with ours. So as long as the program is there, I will continue to use it to support nonprofits in Bristol and Warren. If the program goes away, it goes away. But it is the money gets spent, and it can get spent in Warwick. Nothing wrong with Warwick, but I'd rather that we get our share in Bristol Warren.
I also think some of the things like initiative, voter initiative, and referendum, that would require changes to our state constitution. So, there's a process to do that, but I think that as much voter participation as possible would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Can I just speak to the legislative grants for a minute? I haven't done one for a few years, but professionally I was in nonprofits and so was involved with those a bit. I have never seen such a horrible process as that. The oversight, the reporting back, there were no requirements. Here, have some money.
Oh, I think has it changed?
Oh, that's definitely changed.
Yeah.
Changed?
Yeah.
It was, I mean, reports were never requested even though
there
they
you
were
have
supposed
to.
to.
Receipts have to be.
Okay.
In fact, there are organizations that were recommended to me for not to, because they have not complied with that.
Okay,
in the
thank
past.
you.
You can't get your
Appreciate
next
that.
grant unless
Good.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
That's okay. It's good that we've actually made something better, right?
Yes.
When you experienced it, that's good news. Yeah.
Do you happen to know how much of the state budget is set aside for legislative grants?
Oh, I don't know, but you can go online, and if you Google Rhode Island legislative grants, you'll see a page of all of our names and what
Yes.
we've asked for and what is going to be granted
But
this
the
year.
total value of the program, I don't know, it's part of the Joint Committee for Legislative Services budget, but.
2 million?
You know, is it 2 million?
It was last time I
Oh.
checked.
Yeah.
2 million?
That's past news. but-
And they definitely are not what I would support generally, but I'm a Tiger mom. If you're my constituents and they exist, I'm going after them for you. So, and I am prioritizing things like food banks and libraries and essential.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have received a grant from Senator Busa, I'm grateful, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
but rather than things that are probably more
Of the arts, things that are not funded otherwise.
Yeah.
Legislative grants.
Museums, art organizations.
Just a
things.
final thought on that is because the Senate President and the Speaker of the House determine which of you gets the grant, that's a specific decision on their part, two people. You can put in for something, anything, that they will decide. And the issue is that, I respect all of you for what you're doing, but every time you put yourself into someone else's pie, they're thanking you for that. I'll give you an example. I went to a legislative grant, $2,000 check, Tiverton Senior Center. Tiverton Senior Center is owned by the town of Tiverton, not like Portsmouth. And two representatives, the senator and representative, gave a check to the senior center director, executive director, at a senior dinner that they sponsored. Now, how many of those seniors at Tiverton thought that they had the two best possible representatives and senators that you could ever want?
You're singing to the choir, Jeff. We understand what you're saying.
All right, I think it's a bad system.
Yes.
Understood.
Nobody,
Understood.
I think it's a bad system.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Now, you don't think we should take credit for helping the community organizations get money? Is that what you're saying? We shouldn't do a photo? I do photo ops, right? When I present a check, I'm going to present a check to Students Against Drunk Driving in Bristol, and we'll do a photo op because that is something good that I've done for my community. So,
As an incumbent,
yeah,
you
it's
get
an
all the
advantage.
credit.
That's true.
Incumbent, you
Yes,
get that back.
that's true.
So if you ever had an opposition, decide to vote for it.
They don't have access to that money
They don't have
to
that.
help their community. Now, in terms of the speaker controlling, I have never had a grant rejected. I don't know if you have.
No.
Unless the organization itself was not a 501c3,
Well,
right?
but we also, I look at the nonprofit and look at what they do.
Right.
You know, who they serve, and that's what we do.
In the
That's
sense
what I
that we
do.
were given an amount, but we weren't, and we were allowed to adjust, because it was actually reduced in the Senate. And we were given the task of deciding where that money went. And again, I think the largest grant that I asked for was $2,500, and that was to tap in. Like, so I'm not looking, and I don't know that anybody at tap in is gonna,
But
how many
you've
folks?
taken statewide taxpayers' money
Correct.
and delivered it to Tiverton, Portsmouth, Warren, Cranston. So the folks in Cranston paid taxes and you spend it in Tiverton.
But they get it too.
Cranston gets it.
Everybody gets it.
Maybe they do. There are some representatives who refuse to do it.
Right.
And they are not.
I didn't make up the system.
All right, thank you for the time you spent on that.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah,
So
you know-
why don't- Go ahead. I think we're just running out of time. I appreciate the question,
Yeah.
and I think that all of us would be fine if they went away, but
Yeah.
I will echo that, they're small grants for the most part, at least on our level, that go towards nonprofits that are doing good work, and I think that while they're available.
And they're all tax-paying citizens.
And those organizations rely on them, I think that's okay. Just to answer some of the other questions quickly, somebody asked about some of the gun violence prevention legislation. I'll tell you that I'm the lead sponsor in the Senate on the safe storage bill. And that I think the signals are right now that that has a very good chance of passing. So I liken that to a seatbelt bill. For a long, long time, cars were the #1 killer of children, and we mandated seatbelts, and we mandated car seats, and we mandated airbags. Guns are the #1 killer of children right now, and I think that responsible gun ownership means that guns are safely stored.
And I'm a top 10 sponsor of the assault weapons ban in the House. I ran on that, so folks vote for me. They know what I stand for. That's a deeply felt position that I have. I have long, detailed conversations with some of my constituents about the lack of wisdom of that position, but it is one of those core values that I have, so I will stick with that. And I can give you all the arguments. I know we have definitional issues and all the other issues, but on that one, I ran on it, and
I think that's probably one of the most contentious issues in between the House and the Senate is that issue. I can tell you that I have 6 grandchildren, but I have 3 in schools, and when each child left a school and they were separated throughout the district, I felt safe, that they were safer. And that, and my son said that to me. He said when they left, when they weren't all together, he said, I think about it all the time. If you're a parent, it can happen here. We have people that are very well armed here. And do you think that they can't walk into a school? And when you have 3 grandchildren all in the same space, you think about that. And if you're a parent, you think about that. So I'm not against the Second Amendment, but I think there's some regulation that will keep our children safer and our community safer, and I support those, and I run on that.
And my family's from Wyoming, so you can imagine what their position is on guns. But I'll tell you that even they would support the safe storage bill that Senator Loria is introducing, and there's also something called the assault weapons ban that I would also support, but that's not.
That wasn't even introduced, was it? in the
That's
Senate?
unlikely to pass.
It's
The
unlikely to
Senate
pass.
does not like
Could you
that.
define assault weapons for us so we understand what you're talking about?
I think, I'm not one of those people like Jim 70 where I can get into all the details, but I just want to say it's something that you can kill a lot of people really quickly, and it fires really a lot of
That's a
rounds.
technical term, I'm just
Is that-
asking.
isn't that terrible? I totally appreciate that you're asking that.
And the
but
fact
it's like,
that some of you are so behind it and pushing it and sponsoring these bills, I'd like to hear if anybody has a
well, I don't
definition.
think.
There's a
the bill
definition in the
defines
House
it.
bill.
The bill defines
I'll send it
it.
to
The
you.
bill defines it, and they
But you're
outlawed
pushing
Tommy
it. You should have
guns
some
in the
background with
20s,
it.
and we should be able to do this again.
If I may
We'll-
say something, we could be here talking about that for the next.
Yes, you're
Exactly.
absolutely right.
Sorry,
And
Exactly.
So what I would like to say is that it would be nice if our representatives would be talking to the people in the gun community and trying to understand the other side and trying to come up with some kind of a consensus and maybe a compromise.
Okay.
Well, because we are gaining tools versus paying attention to the people that actually do that harm.
We do that too, actually. You can do both.
And we would have to pay attention to what's going on with the population, because after what we had with the virus, we had a lot of people that lost their marbles, so we would have to pay attention who has guns, why they have guns. Providence just seized the biggest seizure of the guns, drugs, and cash money in their history. And you can trust me on that, none of it is legal.
Right.
So these people pay no attention to the laws, they do whatever they want, and they're doing very, very well.
Yep. Got it, thank you. Go ahead. In terms of the bottle bill, Representative McEntee and
Senator
Valverde have a bill, a joint commission. Yeah, and this is a difficult bill to pass in Rhode Island. There's a coalition of interests that want to make sure that the bill doesn't negatively affect their business. To Lisa's point, we don't want to pass a bill that hurts small businesses, right? So you have to take into account what the convenience stores have to say about this, what the liquor stores have to say about it, what the supermarkets have to say about it, right? And the big question is no one wants excess plastic or waste or litter, right? Everyone agrees that we need to control the waste stream, but what do you do with the bottles you're returning is the question. That's really, and the commission's working hard to hear from folks who have various solutions in other states. So I don't know if we'll get it this year, but we're on the way to some kind of bottle bill.
Is this bottle bill a deposit as you're talking about?
It will be a deposit, but again, where does that nickel or dime travel, right?
I just take mine to
And where do the bottles
that's
travel?
right.
I take mine to Massachusetts.
Yeah, we don't want the bottles to travel to a plant where they burn the plastic and put it in the atmosphere.
Right.
You know, there's so many issues.
I just
And
want to
there's
make sure
also
I was
issues like-
thinking the
like
same thing.
NIPS are a particular concern. So like there's even subsets of those plastic bottles, and how do we deal with those? And should they be dealt with all together, or should we separate it out and how we deal with NIPS versus how we deal with
I just
other
want to make sure I was on the same page. I know my daughter has a nonprofit she collects bottles for and deposits them in Massachusetts.
Right.
As
Gives
far
them
as
money.
environmental bills are concerned, I think a really big one this year is that Senator Gu and Representative Spears are introducing something to look at, they're calling it the Act on Coasts bill, because they feel that, especially since we are an island, that many of us are seeing what's happening because of the bigger storms and whatnot. They're going to try to come up with a plan to deal with the climate change that's
Defeat Mother Nature.
Sorry?
Defeat Mother Nature.
No,
at
to
least we
help
should be
protect our communities
prepared.
against rising sea waters. You don't want things to be falling into the sea. It's a coastal resiliency plan.
Yeah, they're trying to come up with one.
Start building along the shore.
But we're already
Might not
there.
help the folks that are already there.
We're already there, yeah.
But anyway, that is also a big bill, and as far, I think someone else brought up seniors, and I am a senior, I'm getting Medicare this year, thank you very much, and, yeah, it's tough because, you know, there's so many pressures on seniors that we're hearing at the doors about, you know, not being able to afford to live in your home, not being able to afford health care. I personally am more on the healthcare track and trying to rein in the companies that are ripping off folks in our healthcare system, but nonetheless, I'm also introducing a bill for a tax credit for family caregivers. It's not as much as I'd like, but it's for $2,000 for folks that make $100,000 or less to get that tax credit because they're taking care of someone that's a family member and is old or disabled. So I'm introducing that bill, and there's also, let's see.
ADU, the accessory dwelling unit bill, which I sponsored, passed the House last year. Thank you, Representative Dunn, for your vote. Did not pass the Senate. It has been moved out of committee in the House and will be to the floor next week, where I expect it will pass. My colleagues in the Senate need to help me out to get it through the Senate. You know what this does, right? It loosens up zoning a little bit to allow property owners to build an accessory dwelling unit on their property. Now, how big the property has to be, what do you do about water and septic, all of those are details that are in the bill. And it is a way of increasing density gently, as we say, so that you're not changing, as we call it, the character of the neighborhood. That's not my favorite phrase, but people use it all the time. So I'm hopeful that it will pass this year.
I just wanted to. Social Security for seniors could get off the tax rolls.
So that's one of the priorities of the AARP. I spoke with them on Thursday, and I know that bill is being introduced, and I think it has a shot.
Yeah.
At least a reduction.
Yeah.
I think at least a reduction will happen. Whether it will be eliminated altogether this session, I'm not certain. But I think that is definitely on the.
Every time we lower taxes, we have to find the revenue to pay for things, and that's probably the most difficult part of the job is finding the revenue. You know, there's so many great ideas, but they cost money.
And Pam may know me as a nurse because that's where we get together, but I'm also a representative of AARP. I'm a volunteer. And our two big issues are the ADUs that June's been working on diligently, and we've been supporting her as much as possible on that. But the other one is Social Security. That's our next big item. And we've looked at all different ways, and obviously we're open because we know the restraints on the budget and things like that. But it's one of the things that we want to have happen because we are one of the 11 states that tax Social Security.
Right.
The rest of the states in the union don't. So, you know, we're right behind that. And if you don't know AARP, we're very, very active in trying to support people 50 and above. Those that are 50 will soon be getting Medicare and Social Security. It's not far down the line. The time passes quickly.
And there are those with municipal pensions or teachers' pensions like me who, you know, and I didn't retire that long ago, and so my pension is more than adequate. But I never get a cost of living increase, and that's a problem. But there are lots of people that retired years before me, and they don't get Social Security because they didn't pay into it. And so there is a study commission to look at how can we do anything for these. I'll have to say, the speaker, and people don't generally know this, he put in $7 million into that fund. So you remember when it first happened, when Gina did it in 2012 or 13, I think I was going to be 80-something years old before I ever got a cost of living increase. We have added money every year to that, so it's bringing that age limit down. Every year he puts money into that fund, but it's not fast enough for people that are in their 80s now. So, you know, 70s and 80s right now. So, but they are looking at, they are studying that. I think it's the Treasurer's Office that's doing that.
And we're trying to have conversations like on HHF, we just had this conversation this week. When you're looking at a fiscal note, so when there's a bill that costs money, then the budget department gives us a fiscal note on what it should cost, what they expect that it would cost. But then we also have to, when we're doing those fiscal notes, decide or take into account money that we're losing because we have that policy. So specifically like the Social Security. How many people change their residence because of that tax. And so then we're losing all of that tax because we try to protect a small part of the tax. So we're trying to have those conversations too, that when you look at some of these policies, that it's not just the money that's being lost, but also that we're losing money because the policy exists. And that's the case in healthcare sometimes too. So I think that we're trying to have more of those thoughtful conversations, that when we look at the cost of some of these programs, that we're looking at the entire picture of the cost and not just the bottom line of that particular change.
Well, Rhode Island is definitely getting older.
Right.
You know, we are getting more older people in Rhode Island, but people are trying to leave too because of the tax issues.
Well, you know, the one problem I have with our fiscal notes is that they'll say something like, oh, you're going to lose X amount of tax revenue if you have this policy, but they don't say, well, now that these people have that extra money in their hands, what are they going to do? They're going to spend it, and our tax revenues could go up for that reason, and they don't take that next step of analysis. They just say, oh, we're going to lose this amount. We're also giving tax, you know, you can say, oh, we're doing bad things by giving tax credits for programs you might not agree with, but do you agree that we should give $20 million of tax credit to Citizens Bank? We do. It's a credit. It's a credit. And there have been analyses that show that if you give it to small businesses, if you give these tax credits to small businesses, you create a lot more jobs with a lot less money. But, and I have to say that's something I'm just starting to get into, but we need to look at those policies as well. And last thing I'll say, just generally, y'all might not all agree with all our policies, but there is a Venn diagram of overlap. And I think that if we talked, and I managed to talk even to some folks who may not like me, and we can find that common shared area of the Venn diagram and work to push forward on that, and I think that makes a lot more sense than just arguing about where we disagree. So.
How about somebody that hasn't?
I just want to know if legislation came up about Inspector General, would you all support that legislation? I know it's not, there's nothing in it, it's just in theory,
It's in the House, I think.
Okay.
I think Leader Chippendale has introduced it, I believe.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah. I like the concept for all the reasons that y'all talk about, and you know, it's hard for us to find out what's going on inside agencies. I hate to say this because it sounds so defensive, but you know that we're part-time, and you know that, you know, I don't have a staff assigned to me, and I can say, go find stuff out about a thing, right? So if there's an Inspector General's office that is truly independent, I think that helps increase the ability to get that kind of oversight. So I support the concept.
Yeah, I support the concept, but, and I think the problem is, some of the problems that the Inspector General will have to be tracking down are so complicated. They are going to need staffs of accountants and lawyers and everything to go after some of the bad guys. And also, I do want to support Peter Neronha, our Attorney General's efforts to try to do the kind of work that an Inspector General would do. It's complicated.
He's an elected official, the idea of Inspector Generals, they're not tied to a political party or office. So, I mean, and as far as staffing, I think there's plenty of extra staffs in the state of Rhode Island that could easily fill.
The Inspector General of Massachusetts is the first state to incorporate the Inspector General office. It was in 1981, I think. I think they spent $85,000 on the salary. And the first year they returned to the general fund $1.7 million in cost overruns and stuff recovered by the state. That goes on across, I think, 36 other states in the United States have Inspector Generals. We're not known for being the least corrupt state in the country, all right? Let's just say that. I think there's money to be made, I think there's money to be recovered, and I think the number they threw out, Speaker, when he said he wasn't interested in the idea, was $250,000 for the position today in Rhode Island.
That's just the position, not the office.
I understand that, but I think that in today's money, $1.7 million in 1981, in today's money, would probably fund that position fine, and just what they do. So if that helps you with a decision, I'm glad to.
Yeah, and I think that it's not just finding the person or finding a person to do that, but it should go after the kind of things that save that money for Massachusetts. Like, you tell me, where did they find that corruption, and should we be looking in that same area here? I think that's also a conversation we need to have.
Well, that's an ongoing thing. You can contact them. We're right next door. We could always ask.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. Like, you could just keep talking about, let's have this one office and let's do this, but I also would want to go down the path of saying, where is there waste of money in the state. Frankly, I've been looking at the Medicare, managed care organizations, and that's another weird, I think, big picture difference. You and I probably agree that there's a waste of money, but I'm saying that it's coming from the privatization of our government rather than just our, lazy bureaucrats. Because Medicare Advantage, for example,
I'm not talking nickel and dimes, we're talking like, think about the
Yeah, we're
Soprano
talking
Bridge, we see
billions,
that, now we still
yes.
have the pilings still there from the bridge that was built. But they're
And we have-
eventually just gonna crumble in, maybe
And
they'll
we
fall on a
have
boat going by.
seven, we have 7 contractors,
Yeah.
7 private contractors. And my friends who worked at DOT many, many years ago told me that in-house they had really good staff that were working on this. And they've just been, shipping it out to private folks, and that's a problem. So,
No big
If I
contracts
could
and
just
stuff too.
interrupt, I see Alan here, and you remind me that we were going to say at the beginning that Senator Felag, we're trying to schedule a time when all 5 of us who represent Bristol could be together with you. We did the best we could, and Senator Felag has another obligation today, otherwise he would be here, so I did want to.
Yeah, he's not even in the state.
That's right, so I meant to say that when at the beginning, and I didn't.
Yeah, I
Susan,
forgot
sorry.
to, yeah. Peter, you've had your hand up for a while. Peter.
But I forgot my question.
Funding for Alzheimer's funds?
Quick question, and I appreciate your hospitality because I'm not from here, but this is a question I asked the other day at the State House. $90+ million for corporate welfare for a commerce corporation that underachieves at an incredible level and has had outright losses and outright disasters and very little accountability. There's a whole conversation to be had about quasis, right? All right, versus an $8 million shortfall for RIPTA, which materially affects everyone in this room, I would imagine, and everyone in the state. Why can't Commerce, you talk about outsourcing and privatization and corporate welfare, Commerce Corporation is unhinged. $10 million from the city of Pawtucket Harbor money for a soccer stadium, millions of dollars is spent at the Commerce Corporation level for a soccer stadium, all right, for a Trump-era initiative. Doesn't seem to work real well with the framework that y'all are providing. What can be done about Commerce Corporation?
good question. Have to research that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, having a conversation about whether or not it should become an agency of government that reports to the governor as opposed to a quasi that's a good question, right?
Well, he sits on the board, but the problem is ultimately, is it the mission of the state of Rhode Island to be a failed investment banker for largely out-of-state corporations or special interests? I won't name her, but there's a news reporter who got a grant for her yoga studio. Come on, man. Meanwhile, $8 million shortfall. Our line, all right, was one of the most successful projects undertaken by RIPTA in recent history, and you can't afford chump change for that?
But my understanding is the yoga studio has housing around it and has revitalized the neighborhood. That's the purpose of commerce. I'm not defending
But that's why you
commerce,
have banks.
But the purpose of commerce is, it's an economic development tool, right?
How can you have they're a failure? And the problem is ultimately, I'm going to be cruel here, but state-level commerce corporations don't actually attract the cream of the crop of the investment banking community. I mean, being blunt, and they have an unmitigated multi-year track record. I mean, 38 studios, anyone? A soccer stadium that all sorts of experts have pointed out is going to be a complete failure, a black hole financially for the state. And yet they're allowed to go unimpeded because they're developing jobs. There's no, I mean, when was the last time Commerce Corp reported to any of you folks in any detail what they're doing?
None of us are on Commerce.
I'm sorry?
None of us are on the Commerce Committee.
Yeah, but you talk about
But the
oversight.
secretary is from Bristol, we should note, so.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Do any of you support Representative Morgan's bill for American Dream, and do you think it'll get passed?
So I support the concept of providing first-time home buyers with some help, with some down payment assistance. We've had that program in place for a couple of years
It used
now.
to be ring-fenced and then
We have not heard Rep. Morgan's bill yet. I think it may come to finance, it may come to housing.
But would you support it?
I would need to know the details, right? Who qualifies, how much do they get, is there Do they pay it back? So I don't know the details of the bill. It's a
Who's the
pretty
finance
hefty.
institution?
Yeah, it's a pretty hefty subsidy, which is great. I mean, I think first-time home buyers need help. So I support the concept, and again, we already have a program in place to help first-time home buyers, but I would need to look at the details, which I haven't seen yet.
Same, I've never, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, so I will definitely go back and try to find out about it, and if there's a Senate companion, I'm not aware of
There
it.
is none.
Would you look into it?
I will look into it. Housing is a big deal. I agree with Representative that the first-time home buyers need help. I know that similar programs have happened, like, so the problem is that when you offer money, and again, I don't know the details of this bill, but similar things, you offer money for affordable housing, if you don't have the affordable housing for those people to qualify for, then it becomes difficult. I mean, I was on the Housing Board of Trustees in Barrington with a program to help first-time buyers, and I had a decent amount of money to do so, and it's difficult to even give people that money because the units to qualify for that money don't exist. So we have to work on having affordable units. And it can happen in tandem, but that's a big problem as well. I mean, first-time home buyers have to be able to get into the home, help.
There's no stock, nothing to buy.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to buy at this point, right? So
And nothing's
that's a separate
affordable.
problem.
One way that would make it affordable, I wonder how you each feel about it, is bringing back mortgage interest as a tax deduction, which has been gone for a decade in our state. There's only a federal tax deduction. Rhode Island no longer provides. It was done on New Year's Eve about 10 years ago when no one was paying attention. Mortgage interest rate as a tax reduction. So I'm wondering if you would think that those of us who do have a home should be able to deduct our mortgage interest.
I want to throw out an idea.
It's a good question, thank you.
I want to throw out an
Does anyone
idea
have an answer to the
that
question?
I was unaware that, I know that it's hard to deduct it now if you're like you make a sort of middle-class
It's
income.
not an
but it doesn't.
option
Right,
for
yeah, and I was
two-income
unaware that it
big
used to be
families.
and it wasn't anymore, so I would have to.
It's
look
been a
into it.
decade.
Yeah, I want to rent deduction too while we're at.
I just want to throw out an idea that's worked in many states, and it's been working in certain towns. It's not statewide, but would you consider looking into a statewide homestead exemption for residents of Rhode Island? That way, the seniors, our taxes keep going up and up. A lot of seniors are having to leave Rhode Island because of property taxes.
So
And
we're
they may have
working-
been here a long
sorry.
time.
So the commission that I chair on housing is working on trying to keep Rhode Islanders in their homes, stop private equity firms from coming in and buying up stock. We had a hearing with a gentleman who said, I own 40 single-family homes in Newport, and they're all Airbnbs. That was supposed to be good news for us. That was not well received. And he's from New York. He came in from New York to tell us what a great service he was providing to the residents of the state by buying up 40 single-family homes. You need to know your room, right? So we are looking at all of these ways to try to keep folks in their home, make them more affordable, and again, that housing is for Rhode Islanders.
Yeah, I lived in Florida where you could not raise property taxes more than 3%. There's all different ways of doing it.
That's right.
And all kind of different exemptions.
Excuse me, everybody. I am sorry to interrupt this wonderful conversation. I'd like to thank our local delegates again for being here. We have another program coming in, which you're welcome to.